Hi, and welcome back to the Working Class History podcast. As you may know, we don't get any sort of funding from any wealthy benefactors, corporations, governments, or political parties. Our work is funded by you, our listeners and readers, on Patreon. In return, our supporters on Patreon get access to exclusive content and benefits, like ad-free episodes, bonus podcast episodes, and a couple of exclusive discussion podcast series, Fireside Chats, and Radical Reads. So here is a little preview of our latest episode for our patrons. You can join us, help support our work, and listen to the whole thing today at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes.
As we come marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts grey, are brightened by the beauty sun discloses. And the people here are singing bread and roses, bread and roses.
This was one sort of thing that I did want to talk about in terms of this year, which is especially like you can see now how kind of liberals and centre-left people are pushing for their own destruction in a way that is very reminiscent of the 1920s and 30s from, all these kind of like social democrat and centre-left and centre-right to some extent parties pushing to like rearm Europe and strengthen Europe's defences against Russia, especially in Germany, while at the same time the far right is growing so much. So they're pushing for the government to be given all of these additional weapons and bigger militaries, France talking about potentially reintroducing military service and all that, while the far right is starting to take little bits of state power in places and pushing towards getting state power nationally. Obviously, in some countries they have it already. And then the other day, or recently, you see Labour in Britain, while Reform is almost certainly going to be the next government because they're so far ahead in every opinion poll. The Labour Party thinks this is the best time to get rid of the right to trial by jury.
Yeah, that was like was a completely out of left field kind of, because I was already thinking that the prescription of Palestine Action was already a completely outlandish thing to do with, again, with the idea of a reform government coming down the line. Because, okay, so, as soon as you outlaw Palestine Action, straight away you had like, various think tanks being like, oh, well, yeah, Palestine Action, they need to be banned. But, there are a couple of other groups that need to be banned as well. And, then you see Trump's thing about banning Antifa. I can't believe Antifa. I'm starting to pronounce it like the Americans. And you just know that, like a reform government in the UK would just be like, oh yeah, great. So the precedent has been set. Let's expand it further.
Exactly. And these like swivel-eyed loons, they believe in all this basically Nazi conspiracy theories like Great Replacement theory and cultural Marxism and all these things that were fringe Nazi conspiracy theories like 3 years ago, and now are like mainstream views held by the US government. And so like these people are going to get into power, and for all the things about the US kind of going fascist, the fear of that and the talk about that, in a lot of ways, the government system in the UK is actually much more fragile and easy to kind of subvert than the government in the US, which has more checks and balances in it. Because in the UK, like the government who wins the election, if they've got a majority, can then literally do whatever they want. So if Reform won like Trump did, could just do all the stuff that Trump wanted to do, like just ban abortion nationwide or something like that. Fortunately, to an extent, I mean, they are talking about restrictions on abortion and things like that. But even on like the far right, that's not a popular policy in the UK. But if you have a majority, you could do that if you wanted to. Yeah. There's no constitution or Supreme Court that can really overturn that. I mean, obviously there is a Supreme Court, but because there's no constitution, they can't overturn very much. So they could just cite Great Replacement Theory and say that being a member of the Labour Party is treason. Like they literally talk about like these people as being treasonous, like Keir Starmer and that government as being treason to betray the country and whatever. And they could literally just do that. And Labour are like, oh yes, please, let's bring in all these laws and strengthen all these institutions which could be used to ban us and throw us all into camps and never not let us have a jury trial and never get out. And it's like, you know, it's like, please, you know, it would be kind of just ridiculous if it wasn't so absolutely terrifying.
I know. Yeah, and there's so much stuff. Like seeing like, you know, all the anti-migrant stuff that the current government are doing, thinking that will steal the reform vote. It's like imagine if you've got like a balloon, like an anti-migrant balloon, and reform are blowing into it and blowing it up, blowing it up really, really big. And you're like, gosh, well, we need to find a way to deflate that balloon. Yeah, we're going to blow into it more. And you just see them blowing into it. And it's like, all that happens when you do that sort of thing. You're basically saying, yes, migration is a huge issue. And we also believe that something drastic needs to be done about it. And you will never be the ones to do the most drastic thing. They will then, just as you think that you've taken the reform policy or the far right policy, the far right will always step one step over and be like, oh, actually, this is the new level that you need to bring it to. We're going to put naval ships in the channel and literally shooting boats as they come across. Whatever you do will never be enough. Like, it's a funny thing because I definitely see it a lot in the UK, and especially because of all these flags that have gone up and things like that. So I don't know if people know in other places, but in the UK there was a campaign of basically putting up British and English, and I guess in other places, maybe I think in Wales they were definitely putting up Welsh flags. Yeah, so putting up these flags and also painting them onto people's houses and all sorts of stuff like that. And basically that was a big campaign by a bunch of far right agitators, and it spread really widely across the country. But I feel like on the left there started to be this this desire for oh well, can we reclaim the flag? Can we reclaim the flag, and can we have a kind of a progressive patriotism or something like that? And again, I am very, very skeptical of progressive patriotism. I might be stealing this from a Jewish Marxist called Moshe Postone, who basically he says that the left will never be as good patriots as the right, because fundamentally the left is not motivated by the love of your country, above everything else. It's a kind of a universal desire for justice and things like that. So the idea that well, why don't we just level Gaza and build really fancy hotels there, and then use that money to fund public services in the UK? I don't think you can argue against that on a patriotic basis. You know what I mean? It's good for our country. It's bad for them. I feel bad for them, but that's nothing to do with us.
I mean, that is how a lot of European social democracy, especially historic Labour governments in the UK, worked.
Exactly.
Let's chop off workers' heads in Malaya so that they can make more rubber, so we can pay for the NHS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's completely it. Exactly. So I'm so skeptical of any attempt to sort of do this sort of progressive patriotism dance. I just think whatever you do, it just comes off as insincere, because I'm not ultimately motivated by my love of Britain, as British as I might be in many ways, and things that I do love about Britain and British culture. It's not Britishness that motivates me in politics, and I don't think it is for anyone on the land. It's a different moral and political and ethical and philosophical framework completely as to why you should look after migrants when they come to your country. something special about being British or whatever. You know what I mean?
I also think that just on a more kind of fundamental level than that, because basically the background for this, for any, especially people in the US that aren't aware, is that, yeah, Labour are proposing all these new really horrific new asylum policies to penalise migrants. In particular, they at the moment people can apply for permanent residency after 5 years, and they want to increase that to 20 years. They also want to have the migration policy basically treat people much more differently depending on how much they earn, so that high earners can migrate much more easily. And so all like really terrible stuff that will totally upend people's lives. And, you know, if you have to wait 20 years, you can't have any kind of stable existence in that point.
Oh, but why won't they integrate? You know, you're like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you were there, like, some, like, kid who's, like, been in the country since he was 5, and now he's, like, 24. He still doesn't know if he's ever going to be able to settle. You know what I mean? You fucking mad. Like, yeah.
Labour are only doing this as a shameless and desperate attempt to grab votes from Reform, right, to stay in power. But the thing is, all of these, like, racist idiots that are going to vote for Reform will never vote for Labour. They'll never vote for them.
That brings us to the end of this episode preview. Hope you enjoyed it. To listen to the full thing and help support our work researching and promoting people's history, join us today on Patreon at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. That's patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes. Catch you next time.